Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. I did it differently this time. Don't know why. Welcome to another episode of Decrypted. Guys, we have so many topics we're going to be breaking down. Hacks are happening faster than teams can respond. We're seeing chains jumping in. What they're doing right is what they're doing wrong. Lots of discourse there. And of course, Bitcoin be making moves. Jack, how we doing?
I'm good. Man, we have a lot to talk about today. So I feel like a lot to talk about. I think I'm not even going to get into it. I'll wait. I'm just ready to rock and roll today.
100%. Stan, how are you, man?
Yeah, it's like another week at scale. I think we had lots of things happening, and it's kind of interesting because we have sort of, I would say, like a set of projects, almost like a mini startups inside Scale. People experimenting, and we came to the conclusion that with AI, you can kind of churn off more things. You can create more apps. So we had some really interesting discussions last week about how do we change the structure internally. In a sense, with AI, you are able to create much more, and hopefully this will allow our team members to also kind of self-express and try different things, because the price of actually trying things becomes way less. And in the past, like during the crypto summer times, we actually, Scale Foundation actually issued lots of grants to outside startups. We still do it, but it's actually also possible now with AI to essentially have your own inside startups instead of like fund outside startups. Basically, you let people inside Scale experiment and do different things. So we're actually doing many different things, many of them related to AI.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to add to that, Stan. That's a good point. Like, if you think about Scale labs, literally the term labs is like an old term for places where they tested and experimented a lot of things. Okay. And then that's why a lot of startup companies and are called something labs, because you're testing. And we were a labs and created this huge piece of infrastructure. And now, hey, we've got all these app partners. We're continuing to work with them, but the cost of experimentation now is so low. And we also know these unique powers of what Byte protocol can do and really fast gas-free blockchains can do. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how corporate culture evolves and startup culture evolves, because before it was you could do one thing and you had to do that one thing and focus only on that. And I still think a lot of that best practice carries on. So if you think about us doing experimentation, we're not just willy-nilly, this person's doing this person's doing this, and no one's doing their day job. No, it's very strategically experiments. Oh yeah, okay, let's test this. And anyways, Stan, I think it's a good point. And it's business culture is changing. Best practices are changing because the opportunity costs are much lower than before to build something.
100%. Just costs a subscription. But no, yeah. Lots of builders doing really, really cool things. But there are some builders out there that are doing not so good things, some naughty things. Hacker builders. So I think most people saw in the news and on the Twitter sphere that there was, a big, massive hack that went down on Arbitrum. Jack, why don't you give the people a little bit of an introduction onto what happened, and we can go from there.
Yeah, well, hey, if you've not been paying attention to this, means you just haven't been on Twitter at all this week. But on Sunday, there's $292 million of ETH effectively stolen. Okay, now how does this happen? And by the way, there's a much bigger cascading problems that started. There's something called Kelp DAO, and they have these RS ETH, these. So people are they stake ETH and then they restake it and then they restake it again and then they transfer it somewhere. And you need to in this whole process, layer 0 is the bridge that's utilized. Layer 0 wasn't hacked. Layer 0 has this almost consensus model that does threshold encryption. But layer 0, even though it's secure, if it has an actor that's attacked, that's sending bad information, then you can put bad information into the system, i.e. you can mint $290 million worth of ETH out of thin air. Now, the thing that KelpDAO did is they had only, I think, one point of failure. They had like a one server, one, multi-sig, one of one, something like that. And Stan can probably talk a lot more about the technical details of that happened, but they were able to take over that one, the Lazarus Group, North Korean hackers, and inject bad money into the system. Then that went over into Aave and brought bad money into Aave. And Aave, is this whole thing built on precision of loans. And if all of a sudden someone's borrowing against fake money, it throws the whole thing off. If you bring in 300 million of fake, and then so they in hours, I think they lost like 9 billion of locked value that was supporting loans. There was like a run on the bank. And anyway, and then this thing's kind of like spread out elsewhere. Then we can also talk about how it went into Arbitrum. That's a different topic about governance and like what's really decentralized, what isn't, is it good or bad? But Arbitrum basically froze, I think, like $70 million from the bad guys. And it's been, very binarily received. It's been loved or hated. Okay, that's a high level. Stan, what I missed, man? What else? Want to add to that?
Yeah, let's even discuss like a bigger thing. What would it take to hack the entire like layer 1 network, right? The entire thing, like the entire Ethereum, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. So if like many years ago, people had this kind of debate about POW versus proof of stake, POS. And definitely proof of stake is good because it's green. There's no so much electricity spent. But POW is kind of very, very secure because you need to have those graphics cards. And so if the guys in North Korea want to hack Bitcoin, they have to buy more graphics cards than the entire Bitcoin network. And they just don't have so much money and they're under sanctions. So that's why Bitcoin is very secure. It wastes energy, but it's very secure. Ethereum is just a system of software nodes that have cryptographic keys in memory. So Ethereum network is just thousands of identical software pieces running on Amazon. And in each of those software pieces, there is a cryptographic key. If you steal 2/3 of those keys, you will take all of the money and kill the Ethereum network. And if there's vulnerability in one node, then you can just apply it like a million times in a second. So theoretically, if the guys in North Korea find a way, just a single hole in one of the Ethereum clients, like Geth, for instance, right, the most widely used, then they can literally take in a minute, probably like less than 60 seconds, they can steal all of the keys and take the entire network down. So we're seeing these things with DeFi, but there are actually way more riskier things that can actually take the entire layer 1 networks down. And the reason for this is just humans. Humans tend to make errors. There was some study many years ago that I think like in 1,000 lines, there's a human error. If you write code, 1 in 1,000 lines, you just make an error just because you're human. And so in the past, finding those errors was hard. But now with AI, it's trivial. So you have the situation where, like last week, there was this news that Mozilla browser, which is really a good company, Mozilla, they're based in Mountain View. They have in Silicon Valley, they're good engineers. Claude actually found 57 vulnerabilities in the Mozilla browser, which is one of the most audited and secure pieces of software in the world. So you have this problem where suddenly people understand that you do need to use AI to protect, otherwise you'll get hacked. And we actually at Scale last week, actually yesterday, we had a meeting and we decided that for the next release, we'll make it the must to use AI to search for security vulnerabilities. Because if you're not using AI, then someone else will use AI. And unfortunately, very good software engineers still don't like AI. In my kind of have many friends. It's not at Scale, just like friends, right? And many of my friends are good software engineers, which I respect them. But probably like half of them don't like AI still. They're kind of suspicious about AI. And I think the transition to AI will now have to be hard. People used to think that you could like soft transition to AI. Like people slowly learn AI. Some people do it faster. Some people do it, slower. It could take like several years, whatever. That was kind of the consensus. Now, if you are a software company, you have to hard push everyone to use AI or quit. Because if there's an engineer that doesn't like AI and doesn't use AI, then this engineer is potentially a weak link through which your entire product can be hacked. So I think these things happening, they show that someone in North Korea got, whatever, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, some open source model, and they're just basically taking one thing after another, and they're crunching and finding something, and they're exploiting it, and another. And I think it may be that Ethereum is harder to break as compared to, say, a particular DAO, right? Or a particular thing. But then also the price is way higher. Imagine you wake up and there is no Ethereum. The entire network is down, there's chaos, people are not able to understand what their money is. And so this is a very realistic thing. It could happen tomorrow. That's why I think what is happening is that some open source projects are now closed sourcing their projects. They're closing their GitHub repos just so the North Korean hackers are not able.
Really, Stan? So I haven't heard that. That's So a lot of these open repos are turning closed, huh?
Yeah, it's all over Twitter that people, maintainers of open source products or libraries or whatever, all over GitHub, they're closing their repos because they understand that there may be lots of vulnerabilities. And also, which is really important, they don't have money.
Yeah.
So let's say you have an open source library everyone is using, right? There may be millions of people using your library, but you have no money. It's open source, it's free, right? And I know of some people that like maintain libraries used by millions of like users, and they have zero revenue. It's just like, so you don't have money, but North Koreans do have money. So you don't even have money to check your library for vulnerabilities to fix them because no one's paying you. And the guys in North Korea, they could be Geth, right? One of these clients.
And by the way, I gotta say that's actually not a bad idea during this transition period, because I mean, you think about the Claude AI, like the mythos that they're like, one, they're only giving it, I think, to the top 40 or top 100 internet companies, and if you're not one of those, guess what? You're screwed. You're going to get hacked. And guess what? A lot of open source protocols aren't in that list that get early access. And so it makes sense. They're like, okay, well, let's just at least make it harder for these guys to hack us by not giving them the test before the test.
I'm not sure if you guys saw that actually Versal got hacked on Friday. So Versal, the kind of application.
Yeah, Versal is like used by half the internet, and it actually impacts the Google administrator.
Oh wow, really? Like, I mean, it feels like, I'm not sure if it's correlated. It seems coincidental that the Versal hack happened and then this hack happened a couple days later.
Hey Stan, you know what might be interesting for people to hear is Stan, by the way, if you're just listening to this for the first time, Stan's like a world-renowned cryptographer and actually ran a crypto lab doing cryptography certifications for like the US government and like really big, entities that needed like my old company, we had the FBI and the US Senate, and like Stan actually did an audit on my company's code. And then we got this, FIP certification. So Stan, what is it now with AI? Like, obviously you can write code faster, but you can also find vulnerabilities. Is there something, can you explain to people, like, how does this work? How is this fundamentally changing? And why is it changing more now than 3 months ago or 6 months ago? Are things just getting better?
Yeah, I actually, I can give you an analogy on using a fence. Like let's say you have a very large estate, and some bad people want to get inside of your property, right? And you have this wooden fence, right? Maybe you have like 10 kilometers perimeter, and you walk around and you don't see any holes, but it may be that in your wooden fence one of the pieces is weak, or someone can move it and kind of get inside, and you just don't have time to try and like push every piece. And that's because you're human. Imagine your fence is like 100 kilometers, but with software, imagine it's 1,000 kilometers. Imagine you have millions of lines of code, which would be equivalent to having like a fence, which is like 1,000,000 kilometers. It's a trivial problem just to go and try every single piece of wood to see if it's moving, or if it's letting you to get a hole and then get inside the hole and get inside of this estate. As a human, it's impossible. So in the past, the good thing was that both attackers and auditors were limited. You couldn't really check everything. People tried checking, the most important things, the weakest things that looked suspicious. It was impossible to check every single piece. Now it's possible the AI can check every single piece of wood and see if this particular piece, the tile on your fence is weak. And so now there's like billions of lines of code already written over the years, and the AI is taking this code and finding these holes, these micro holes, weak things. They have been there for ages, but no one found them because finding them was so expensive. So suddenly, so that's actually the reason why AI is not. It's probably now as smart as a human, but not only as smart as a human. It's like a zillion times more powerful in terms of how many things it can check. It can check everything.
And basically, if you don't check yourself, someone else is going to check you.
Correct.
And they're going to find the thing before you, right?
Absolutely. And the guys in North Korea, they're not really geniuses. They're literally taking, I don't know what they take. They might probably take some open source model. They kind of prohibited from using Claude or ChatGPT, whatever. They probably have something. And it's probably true that it's not. So the problem is that it's not so difficult to replicate Claude. Claude doesn't have this magic power.
Like the big China AI, like XAI, or not XAI, whatever.
They could just like download the model. Maybe this model is not as actually as powerful as Claude, but they may actually use like a less cool model, but use lots of computational power, kind of to compensate for the model not being the cutting edge. You can always compensate the model with the computational power, and they can probably, like, whatever, in North Korea they can somehow get lots of graphics cards, and then they have a cluster and then running but the point is that they're not geniuses. They don't understand this code themselves. They're literally like feeding it into this AI, and the AI is giving them the vulnerabilities, and then they're like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. They're not geniuses at all.
So Stan, here's what I heard about Mythos and like the attack vulnerabilities. So like, let's use the fence analogy. So Mythos can find a hole in the fence really well, but what it's also good at is finding one hole in the fence and another hole, and being able to tie those together to get this like extrapolated impact. Whereas independently, each vulnerability wouldn't be that powerful, but they're able to go, oh, if I go here, then I can go here. And they're able to kind of web together weaknesses that those correlations would take. So not only is it hard to find the issue, but then to correlate their meaning together is incredibly complex,
Mhm.
That's why they found like an issue. They found like an actual vulnerability in like the Linux kernel, which is probably one of the most hardened systems ever, right?
Yeah, that's a good that's a good analogy. It's like in the movie, it's like in the Mummy movie, where you have the secret door and you have the snobs, and you need to like put like all of them in the correct position, somehow correlate them, and then the door opens, and then maybe it's kind of a good analogy. And I think it could be, some of these companies like Claude, they hire engineers because they need training data. So they hire engineers to kind of produce vulnerabilities. So the AI, there are many tweaks to do, but I don't think this is I mean, it's not like scientific papers. This is not. I mean, they probably have some cool algorithms and stuff, but it's not like they have something that others will never discover. It's not such a rocket science. It's all copyable. People move from one company to another. It's impossible. Once there's an algorithm at one company, then another company picks this algorithm. This thing, I think they're moving really fast.
So Stan, is it fair to say that like every software company and obviously crypto project, your development cycle shouldn't just be, oh, I'm going to write faster with AI and I'm going to have QA tested and and then maybe we do an audit. You just have to add a component into every sprint, every development cycle, where you just try to beat the crap out of your code with AI before someone else does. And if you don't do that, you're basically screwed.
And hopefully you have money for this, right?
Yeah.
Because one thing which these guys, those Korean guys, they're looking also for some abandoned projects. They don't have money anymore. Because to do this, you need to pay for the AI. And I would actually, your analogy, Jack, is very good. Like Linux kernel. Linux kernel was always probably the most securely audited piece of software. And still they found so much stuff. The point I want to make is that it is almost for sure, if they found so many vulnerabilities in Linux kernel, if they found so many vulnerabilities in Mozilla, it's almost for sure they found that vulnerabilities in Geth, which is, and Parity, whatever Ethereum software. It's almost for sure that Ethereum software is good software.
So here's the other element. Like if you're a software engineering team, all of a sudden everyone's 5 times more productive. Well, no one's cutting engineers because they're just, each one's just worth 5 times as much because they can do 5 times as, but the reality is like, how much are we talking about in like credits? Like if let's say is like $100,000, I think some teams, if they're not well funded, are just going to, just have to dedicate some of what would have been paid for a person now gets paid in credits to help test this stuff, right?
Totally.
I mean, are you talking millions of dollars in credits to find a vulnerability in Linux kernel, or is it tens of thousands, 100? I guess it depends on how deep.
I think it depends very much on the complexity of code. Definitely, the more code you have, the more you need to check. That actually brings the problem. The problem with some of the blockchain software, it's very complex. So actually, analyzing blockchain software is way more expensive as compared to just analyzing smart contracts, because smart contracts could be like 1,000 lines of code. But if you take whatever, like Solana or Ethereum or whatever, this could be like millions of lines of code. And the problem is that Ethereum in particular has become very, very complex. Pretty much everything has become complex. So to actually check Ethereum software, you need lots of money, and but then you have way smaller networks, like whatever. You can pick any layer 1 network, and I think all of them need to be doing something now, because the cryptographic keys, the problem for proof of stake, actually Scale doesn't have it. They don't have it. We're the only network that stores cryptographic keys in SGX. No one ever cared, including Ethereum. All other networks store cryptographic keys just in memory or on the hard drive, just written somewhere on the hard drive. So you have software, and somewhere you have a computer running on Amazon, and somewhere inside of this computer, of this virtual machine, inside of RAM, random access memory, you have the cryptographic key. You steal the key, and you basically everything which got staked to this node. You steal all the money. It's a disaster. It's basically the end of layer one. So I don't want to like it. We could be that that we may actually sometime this year witness something like that, a catastrophic event on a particular layer one. Maybe not Ethereum. Maybe layer one, which is
I think it's safe to say that layer ones and any blockchain infrastructure that doesn't take this really seriously and say, hey, like, if I didn't have to do this, I could build this much code this year. Or they need to say, oh, you know what? Let's aim for 30% less, because we need 30% of our, like a third of our time probably needs to go into just security hardening until we get through this phase, right?
Yeah, and you have something like EOS, right? You have some kind of semi-abandoned networks where who is paying for EOS now? I think like lots of people are not there anymore. So there's a real problem, and I think what's going to happen is that this will cause people to like do a hard transition to AI. Like there will be some angry people running through software companies and pushing people to use AI for security, and like pushing them to transition. And so that's that's the start of this hard transition. Because before that, it was more like, oh yeah, there's AI, you can use it, you don't have to use it. Maybe you don't like it. And now it's like, use it or we're going to all die, basically. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's go back to this hack. So they overtook one machine. It was probably a social engineering hack, I'm guessing. They're kind of good at that. Like they do. But whether they brute forced it with some, like using Moonshot AI or Zipu or something, who knows? But what happened was all this, bad money, fake money got put back into the DeFi ecosystem that then they went into Thorchain and did some sort of like a non-swap and things like Thorchain too. Like I think privacy models that enable Korea to actually like launder money are going to be squashed by governments. Okay, that's another topic. But then here's an interesting thing. Arbitrum has a thing called a security council, a decentralized security council. There's 12 people. Now, these 12 people, I think only one of them actually works for Arbitrum Labs or something, or involved directly in the project. These are 12 people. They probably get a certain amount of tokens or something, but they can actually make a decision to freeze a wallet. They basically have God mode. They have a God mode key. They can do anything they want. They can say, I'm going to take every single penny, but it takes a 9 out of 12 of them to like go into God mode. And they did this and they saved $70 million. They got it back from the hackers. And some people applauded them and said, yay, this is really good. And then other people are like, I'm never using Arbitrum again. This is ridiculous. It's supposed to be decentralized. How is it decentralized if these 9 people, you have all these like, all this cryptography and stuff, and none of it matters because these 9 people are just God moding. So anyways, it was like really binarily received. It was either really positively received or really negatively received. I can see both sides of the argument. What do you guys think?
I saw a lot of, and I saw I think he was the Arbitrum guy that sat on the council. Not exactly sure what he does at Arbitrum, but I saw him say like, this was never a secret. We could always do this. Go and look at this website page from 2021 where it says it here at the bottom, right? My issue, I think it's good, right? I think it's good. My issue is stop acting like a decentralized network. Then I think that's it, right? You can't go around acting like one thing and then having the keys to pull the plug the next day, right? And I think it might actually hurt them in the, at least right now, just from a perception point of view, because, people don't like to be lied. They don't like to be cheated. The whole point of blockchain is supposed to be this kind of idea of, decentralization, decentralized ownership, and there was this massive thing that they could do that 99% of their users didn't know, and it can be scary, right?
Yeah, totally. Stan, what do you think?
I think I think people that actually don't want this to happen, they don't use like Arbitrum. I mean, I think there are situations. It's not a kind of surprise to anyone that, for instance, on Ethereum, lots of people have money on Ethereum. People that never will be able to pass KYC ML, right? Like here in Portugal, for instance, there are lots of people from countries like China buying real estate, and then they never are even able to come here to use the real estate because some of this money is really like government corruption and everything. So it's not no one's secret that really decentralized networks like Ethereum or like Monero, lots of people that have problems with the government, they hold money there. So from this perspective, I think people like people on Arbitrum, like people that really they really want to true decentralization, they don't put money on Arbitrum. But then you have the Security Council. The problem with the Security Council, that the Security Council people may then get like abducted. Then it creates another problem, because if you decide whether you freeze the money or not, you can, for instance, like on the prediction market, right? If there's this vote and then you bet on the prediction market and then you vote in a particular way, so it puts lots of pressure on these people. I wouldn't want to be someone like that, right? Mm-hmm. Because on your vote, maybe and then these North Korean guys might actually bribe some of them. So it creates all of this crazy stuff. It's actually better probably just to be like have like a bank, in the sense that it's like maybe just use like a centralized trading platform like Coinbase. At least it's because it's centralized, but they pretend it to be not centralized. Because if there's this council, how is it different from like someone at Coinbase voting or like board directors of Coinbase voting too? So it's almost like Arbitrum is centralized, but pretending not to be centralized.
Yeah, well, that's what some people are saying is, hey, maybe Arbitrum needs to follow money transmitter laws now that they're centralized.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's none of they only have one of their employees, so it's basically it's like a blockchain in some ways. But the reality is you have to just realize their security is 9 of 12 humans, not this like super duper roll up that then can make all the that relies entirely on Ethereum security. It's like that and these 9 people. So I think it's decentralized still. I think it meets decentralization standards from the like technical perspective for money transmitter laws. But I think I think Stan's point of, hey, people who are comfortable with this probably or not comfortable with this probably just wouldn't use Arbitrum now. And that's maybe just the way the world's going to go. Why does everyone have to have one model? If you want the total decentralized thing, like that no Security Council can overtake, it's entirely dependent on this like huge set of validators running consensus with pure monetary incentive based off of, the way the consensus model works, like use that. But if you want, to let these people save your money if it gets hacked, then so we're just going to find different flavors. And the world's becoming more, less crypto anarchist and less, freedom of money and more like, hey, let's let money move more rapidly and let's partner with banks, not compete with them.
I'm surprised they didn't put it to a DAO vote.
Well, they already had a set of rules. The set of rules, to put something for a DAO vote, you need to make a decision in like minutes and hours. If you're trying to freeze funds from, these hackers are going to try to get that out as soon as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's why they had this process built in advance. And so I got to say, you have to applaud them. It's not like it was a secret. If you read their documentation and their governance policies, this group is meant to make calls in these ways. So, and like Stan said, if you don't like that, well, one, that's shame on you. You should have read the manual, RTFM'd it. And anyway, interesting topics, like cascading topics.
let me ask you another question then about the group. So let's say next time North Koreans become even smarter, and essentially 1 hour before this exploit to happen, they just go and literally abduct, like majority of these people, of these humans, and just hold them somewhere so they're not able to do the votes. So
hey, by the way, Stan, that's why I would never want to be on one of those teams.
Right?
The only way I would is if I were completely anonymous. But then the problem is if you have completely anonymous people, how do you know it's not just 9 people at Arbitrum that have it? You know what I mean? But it's just a catch-22 a bit, because it's, wrench attacks are the most effective ones still. And you just wrench attack those 9 people.
Yeah, I mean, finding out the names of the people is probably very easy. It's like, I mean, that's easy for this North Koreans.
We can probably ask Gemini right now, and it'll tell us who they are.
Yes, and then essentially, if we are talking about $200 million, and maybe next time we'll talk about like $1 billion, right? If it's $1 billion, these people could be like either killed or drugged, or there are so many ways, right? They could be like abducted. People, if you are on Arbitrum Security Council, resign, for your own safety. That's my...
Yeah, and they have elections every 6 months. Here they are. Here are the representatives. I already know. It's
oh my God.
John Morrow from Gauntlet, Gizion from Off-Chain Labs, Ethereum Foundation, Alejandro Munoz McDonald from Immunify, Bartik Kapseski from L2 Beat, Michael Alone from, anyways, I won't keep naming all these people. Zach XBT, so they've got a lot of airtime. They've got some really smart people. But man, I wouldn't want to be on that personally.
Yeah, presumably you call them, right? Presumably you could just literally hack their phones and just prevent them, hack their home networks, just prevent them from voting, because presumably it actually they need to vote to kind of stop this, right? So you're like,
I think they have to sign a transaction. They have to sign some sort of.
So then you're moving these zillions through the bridge. Yeah. You just need to keep these people out whatever, and it actually creates lots of problems. So from this perspective, it's actually better just to be to trade on Coinbase. At least Coinbase is a company, and there's no you can't really abduct any number of people to hack Coinbase. Looks like the really insecure setup, the security council.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I feel like they should have at least half the people be anonymous and just make it even harder to, or some percentage of them. So then,
and then if they vote yes, if they don't stop, how maybe they got bribed? How do you prove? Maybe each of them got $1 million money somewhere through some mixer, right? Through little cash. So all of these things can happen. Almost you can film a movie about Arbitrum Security Council.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we got to talk about some Bitcoin and OpenClaw, right? Because I looked at the time and I was like, wow, we've been going deep here. That was fun. Wild West. Here, the takeaway. If you work in software, get there before the bad guys. Okay, and if not, it's on you. All right. Okay, so Bitcoin is up 15% in the last 60 days, up 10% in the last 30 days, up 12% in the last 2 weeks, and up almost 5%, 4.2% in the last 24 hours. I mean, who knows? There's people saying, oh, this is like a dead cat. This is like a bear trap. And we're just getting it's all false promise. So other people saying, oh no, good. We're finally bounced off the bottom. The cycle's turning. If you look at all the timing, it works out. I mean, for me, I look at market psychology. I don't know if we can find one of those market psychology charts, Ben, where it just has okay. Let me just pull this up real quick.
The Wall Street cheat sheet one.
Okay, so there's a point there's this point where, well, there's all these different phases like optimism, excitement, thrill, euphoria, anxiety, denial, fear, desperation. But on the way up, there's a disbelief zone. We're like, no, this is just another fake. And that's where like people like Warren Buffett already bought. And there's, oh no. And then it starts going up and you get back to like relief and optimism. And then everyone gets in again, but you didn't buy the bottom because you weren't, greedy when others are fearful. There's a lot of these charts, but that to me is like probably the most prevalent thing. Here we go. Disbelief. This is a sucker's rally. Do you see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the stage we're either we might be in disbelief, or are we a way further to the left where we just got over anger and depression? It's just still, I don't know. Like,
are we here? Are we in hope?
The Strait of Hormuz might be opening, and like these negotiations, like that's what seems to be driving the price. But which tells me that like really it probably goes back to a broader like market psychology stage. What do you guys think?
I think that is definitely this political things are playing a role, because how this conflict is going to get resolved. People are basically betting, trying to understand. It's hard for me to prove, but I have a gut feeling that this conflict in the Strait of Hormuz has shown that there is something in this world that kind of prevents like all-out war. It's like the world is getting more connected, and you see something is happening, like the war got stopped and it kind of got stuck, and now there are negotiations, but either it's going to like start again, or it will kind of, people will kind of below radar solve the problem. And my feeling is that there is something in today's world that kind of prevents very huge wars, just because lots of people are trying to like soften things, kind of find a compromise. It's just there's so much communication. There's also crypto and everything. The world is very connected, and everyone is like talking to the US, talking to Iranians, and telling them that don't do this. Or like everyone is trying to massage this into something, not the war. And so that's actually, I think that if this ends up even having some kind of a brittle peace, I think then Bitcoin will definitely react, and the entire world will react, because everyone is trying to understand what's going on. And so definitely, I think that's the reason why people are unsure.
It is that, right? It's like, I feel like everyone tries to get the edge, right? But I think like right now specifically, I mean, we had a BBC article, nothing political, just reiterating what this article said, where, they found 56 incidences of insider trading in the administration, in the US administration, right? And it's like, when you have things like that, you can't win. You can look at all the charts, you can look at all the information, you can look at everything, but you're playing against a guy. You're playing against a industry, right? With rigged dice. We saw. Do you remember, like this time last week, we spoke about, was it Goldman Sachs buying a lot of Bitcoin? I think they bought like $50 billion worth of Bitcoin.
I think Morgan Stanley did last week.
Yeah,
300.
and then we had the Strait of Hormuz like 2 days later, right? Opening and Bitcoin price jumping.
Yeah.
Like, is that a coincidence, or are they playing off of information that they had?
I think that like if that's the only thing, the price of oil and the impact on the economy, that to me tells me we're at a healthier stage of the cycle. We're later in the cycle, because let's say that went away. Like, are we still then, this news, Trump said this today, or this person said this, and the price is like whipping around in the sideways action. Hey, I'm an optimist, so I'm hoping we're further down the line. Again, not financial advice, but these are, I'd say, overly positive signals. It doesn't mean we're out in the clear, but definitely making progress.
It's cutting the anchor off, right? Like that's it. We cut the anchor. It feels like from at least what I've seen is, we can cut that anchor off, which is the current world dynamic. If that'll ever happen, wars and things like that, then we're going straight to. It feels like we might be going to the surface.
So there was this information that this new Ayatollah, the new one, he actually transferred. I don't know if that's true or not. Just like passing this, there was some news article that he transferred like almost $1 billion in crypto to Dubai, and he has now, like about $1 billion of property in Dubai. That he may be even like making money, like renting, whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, but there was this information about this guy like having property in Dubai and buying this property using crypto. So the point I'm making, there's like this kind of a superficial thing where people say, oh, this Trump and this Iran and nuclear weapons, and it's kind of world trouble. And then you look deeper and you see just two crypto traders. Trump has cryptocurrency. This guy has cryptocurrency. It's a little bit like cynical or ironic, but I think it's actually good that they're having a war. The point I'm making is actually better to have corrupt politicians than wars.
I like that.
Unifying force. Like how did humanity avoid getting into World War III? Aligned. They all held the same bags.
Yeah. So I
hope the power of thy bags compel me. The power of thy bags compel me.
That corruption wins, and they actually find a way to like open the strait and like.
Man, they all bought Bitcoin when it was.
Or maybe they trade on prediction markets. Maybe they just need to like make money. Just go back and forth a couple of times. Like this guy, maybe the Ayatollah guy needs more crypto. Whatever. So
okay, hey, we got to talk about OpenClaw and AI real quick, and I just want to say one interesting thing. Meta came out and like Mark Zuckerberg said they're going to put this screen and mouse and like full tracking software on all these people's computers. So unless they're like in their personal email or something, I think, but what they're doing, and I'm like, wow, that's so invasive. But if you think about it, the future of it, if you want to build this product that helps somebody actually really do all these things, because here's the thing, you can look at all of our inboxes, our calendars, our messages and be like, hey, like if you had another version of you'd be like, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. But how do you train an AI to do that? It has to literally see everything a human's doing to map that out. And in a way, that's OpenClaw's job, right? So I think Meta is trying to like reverse engineer a better version of OpenClaw, but OpenClaw is just picking up a ton of momentum. What do you think, Stan?
Yeah, actually, I think one initiative, we're actually experimenting a lot with OpenClaw at scale, because I think OpenClaw is just basically Linux for AI. It's just the platform. It may be not perfect, but it will become perfect later. And just these other platforms, you have like commercial platforms like Claude, Desktop, whatever. You have Codex, I think, from ChatGPT, but all of those things like Windows, they're like, they're not open. You cannot tweak things. OpenClaw, you can tweak anything. So I think that's why it's like it will be the leader. And so what we decided at scale, we're gonna basically eat our own dog food. We're gonna push everyone to OpenClaw and try to do as many things internally at scale using OpenClaw as possible, because we just want to understand what it's all about, And at the moment, I think it's very nasty and not user-friendly, and it has lots and lots of problems, but it's kind of is growing, and it's important to kind of start getting feeling what you can do with it. And but actually, I think it's about like with ChatGPT, you just have a single agent. Essentially, you talk to a single agent, and you are a single person. So ChatGPT is essentially like one-to-one. You are a person, you're talking to an agent. With OpenClaw, it's many humans talking to many agents. Like imagine a chat where it's like you have many agents in the chat and many humans, and it enables very different types of collaboration. So that's, I think, is OpenClaw. People are trying to figure out, if you have an organization with teams, and then you have also multiple agents that also have teams, how is it, what UIs you're going to use, what you can do, it's all not clear at the moment. There's not really like a product like this at the moment. And I think OpenCloud will probably grow into something like that.
Yeah.
So many humans, too many bots.
I totally agree. And it's, the Brex CEO, like, here's the thing. It's like, how do you get people to test this stuff? Brex, which is this like credit card expense company that has all these agents that work for you to help you do your expenses or do your corporate finance, whatever they do. They're like, I think they saw the power of OpenClaw and they're like, well, we should use OpenClaw, but then they're like, well, it's not secure yet. And it's missing all these features. So they built a product and guess who their first customer is? Themselves.
Yeah.
And again, it's changing the best practices. When would a credit card expense company launch an OpenClaw product? Well, guess what? Now the ability to write the code is maybe somewhat neutral. The ability to get access to a first big customer with like a really great use case is not easy. And so I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the way new products are built. They're going to be built by existing companies because they know their own problems. They can test their own products. They can, build these things. And so Stan, I totally agree. It's really interesting. And, you're seeing it take off all over China, all over the place. People are like having not just one-to-one, but having all these things work for them consistently.
I think you imagine you were like, you go back in time machine and it's like Linux version 1.0. And people at the time, Linus Torvalds released Linux. It was very bad, not really useful and kind of ugly and everything. But then people who actually started using it very early, then they actually were able kind of to grow with it. So I think OpenFlow is the same. It's just really at the moment it's very ugly and not really useful, but it's something that is really quickly also changing. And so it's important to get into kind of the momentum. And that's why we will at scale try to put it into many places, many things that we are doing, try to inject OpenClaw and see how it plays with it. Because there are many unknowns, but also many opportunities with it.
Yeah. So stay tuned. We're going to have some interesting discussions and updates on like what we're doing with OpenClaw and what's happening in the industry. Stan, we're coming up on the hour here. I got a proposed topic for a future show. Okay. Gonna throw it out there. Let's talk about like biohacking. Okay. I know it's not like, I know this isn't necessarily a direct crossover to like AI or crypto, but a lot of people who work in crypto and AI, I think, are really into this. Like, all this Andrew Huberman and this whole, anyways, and Stan and I are talking about it all the time. And I think, Stan, it'd just be a fun kind of like, path to take as we talk about all sorts of topics, and we can tie it back to obviously AI and crypto. But what do you think?
That's fantastic, Jack. I think people. I think startup guys, many of startups are trying to buy a hack, and it I think comes also from the point that it's very hard to run a startup or to work for a startup. So people trying to kind of to optimize, and now with AI. It's also connected because suddenly there's lots of progress and you see all of this news coming. So it's people are using AI to improve their health or to cure some diseases. And it's kind of, I think it's all getting it's almost like getting converged with software, because ultimately a human body is just genetics plus, some proteins. So it's also kind of a machine. It's kind of almost like a hardware and software. And now with AI, we're actually able to start understanding better. So like computer science and biology, they're converging. And people like moving from suddenly, like there was, I think Claude just bought, last week they bought like for like almost like $1 billion, a biology company. It's because it's essentially becoming the same thing. It's like AI, for AI just code. Whether it's human code or like if it's Python, it's really also really interesting. And it's actually something that maybe in the future, we all will become biologists to some degree.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Let's add it. I think next week we might have one of our buddies. We gave this teaser before from a really, really big company come in and talk about some IoT stablecoin stuff. Waiting on some corporate approvals for that. But if not, maybe let's do a segment. We can talk about Bitcoin and other things, but let's talk about some biohacking stuff because
Oh yeah.
I don't know, like medicine's changing. Typically medicine, it takes 17 years for something to go from should we do this to like being like then fully adopted and taught in schools. And so what that means is the world moves faster. So a lot of things are happening outside of traditional medical circles. And that's where biohacking's coming from. Let's be honest. Okay, good. I'm pumped. I'm ready for it.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. It's a fun one. And yeah, looking forward to next week. We will see you guys all next Wednesday. Hopefully with our special guest. We will keep you updated. But until then, thank you for joining us for Decrypted. And we will see you again next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
That was good.